So the CS6 icon comes up and we come to a dialog box. And this dialog box asks us three questions really. Do you want help? Do you want to open a project? Or do you want to start a brand new project? And if you have open projects, you can see that they're actually listed here. If you don't select any of those and just select exit, then it'll all shut down. So we're going to open a new project so we can run through the different questions that Premiere Pro are going to ask us as we open up a new project. So I'm going to click New Project, and it comes up with a New Project dialog box, which has got two tabs. One says Scratch Discs, and the other one says General. And we're going to look at the General one here. Firstly, if your system has a CUDA card, that's CUDA, that's by NVIDIA, or you've got one of the AMD cards that are supported with OpenCL, which is often found in MacBook Pros, then you'll find that under the renderer, it isn't grayed out, but you actually have a couple of options, or an option depending on which card you have. One will be either CUDA with the GPU, or the other one will be OpenCL. Obviously, if you have cards that support these functions, you really want to make sure that those are selected in this drop down. Now, the laptop I'm using to record this tutorial doesn't actually have CUDA support, so the only option I have is the Mercury Playback Engine software only. Otherwise, it's the Mercury Playback Engine with CUDA support or with OpenCL. All of them work excellently. Obviously, if something is GPU, that's your graphics processor unit or your graphics card, accelerating, you're probably going to find that things go a little bit quicker. But you can still work with just a software only version, and that's what we're actually going to be working in. Okay, so once you've selected your renderer, the next option down is how do you want your video displayed? The most common way for video is to show it in timecode. However, if you're working with film, it's either 16mm or 35mm, you can actually show feet and frames. And of course you can show just frames, which is what you often work with, say, Flash. You might find it easier to display your footage in different ways. We're going to stick with the default timecode, and I'll explain timecode when we've actually opened up a sequence and we can see what's going on. Okay, so audio samples, there are different ways of doing it, either audio samples or milliseconds. Again, we're just going to leave it as it is default, audio samples. Capture is getting to be very much an older function now. If you're actually going to be capturing from tape, say you've got an old DV cam or an HDV camera, you can actually do that through the FireWire or iLink port on a computer if your camera has got FireWire or iLink out. So you can capture if your camera is an older tape-based operation. Now I happen to have an HDV camera, so I can actually capture via HDV if I want to, but you don't need to select that here, you can select that elsewhere. Also, if you've got capture cards and you're capturing through a different way, you might find you've got options through here, but we're not going to go through those. We're just going to stick with what's standard. We're not going to be looking at third-party plugins because they will come with their own information. Now, I've already changed the location, the default location from where my project is going to be saved. You do that through the Browse button here, and you can browse to a folder that you've created that's going to save your projects. Now, I've decided to save mine on my desktop, and I've created the project folder, which is PP CS6. Now, you can select any project folder you like. There is a default project folder, but I often find it makes a lot more sense to choose a project folder that's often on a totally different disk. If you've got a machine with multiple drives and you want to be able to work quickly with lots of different footage, it's often wiser to save your projects and your footage somewhere else, not on your system drive, because as you know, system drives can get filled up very quickly, and often solid state system drives at the moment are pretty small, and you don't really want to save data on top of those. And also you need to name your project, so I'm just going to name this test. And then before we click OK, let's have a little look at this one called Scratch Discs. Now, at the moment it says, where am I going to put captured video and captured audio? Should I capture it from my camera? At the moment it says it's going to put it into the same place that my project file is saved. And quite a lot of people like to do that because you have everything in one place, you know where it is, and it's easy to transfer from one system to another. However, there is another way of thinking that says, really, I want my video saved on one fast drive and my audio saved on another fast drive, both of them separate from my system drive, because that way I can access the audio and the video very quickly through these fast drives rather than having to wait for everything to come one bit at a time from one system drive. If you do that, just make sure you name your folders properly so that you know what footage relates to which project, and they're easy to pull together should you wish to ship them from one machine to another. And also we've got something down here called video previews and audio previews. My advice is to keep them in the same place that you keep all your footage. So if you keep captured video in one place, make sure you've got your video previews in the same place. Captured audio, make sure your audio previews are in the same place. But you can save them wherever you like, and for the purposes of this training course, I'm going to leave everything in the same folder. And I'm going to click OK, and another dialog box is going to come up, and this one quite often causes people lots of problems. It says, right, now we're going to create a sequence. We're going to put your footage somewhere so that we can work on it. How big do you want that sequence to be? How many lines high? How many pixels wide? What's the aspect ratio of those pixels? How should it look? And the truth is, many people don't know. Unless you've been given footage and you're told exactly what that footage is, and you can go through this list to select whatever footage it may be, you're going to struggle to know exactly what it is. Don't panic, is the first thing to say. There are ways to make Premiere Pro automatically select exactly the right size sequence for the footage that you have. And do bear in mind, of course, with Premiere Pro you can have lots of different types of footage in the same sequence. So if you do know what your footage is, you want to select whatever is going to be used the most in your sequence. Now, I know I'm using HDV footage, and mine happens to be PAL 25. So I would choose HDV. But as you can see, there's a great long list. Even RED cameras are supported. So if you've got a RED camera and you know exactly what it is, we've got RED 5K here, you can actually select a preset that will do exactly what you need to do. However, you don't need to create presets. Firstly, you don't actually need to create anything at this point. You could click cancel, import your footage, and force it to create a sequence the right size. So if you really don't know what your footage is, you can click cancel at this point. And then I'll show you how to do that a bit later on. But if you do know what your footage is and it doesn't fit any of these presets, you also have something here called settings. Now, settings are the overall settings that you would have to set if you started from scratch. We've got the presets that does it all for us, but just occasionally you have something odd come in that doesn't have a preset set for it. If ever that's the case, you go to editing mode at the top, there's a little drop down, and right at the top it says custom. Click on custom and all these boxes pop open, and you can then play around and select whatever you need to select to work with your footage. But again, you don't even need to worry about this, because you can force Premiere Pro to create a sequence that's the same size, pixel aspect ratio, frame rate as your footage. Okay, so we've looked at those ones. I'm still going to go for this HDV because I know that's what my footage is. Tracks. That's the last one here. We can choose how many video tracks we display. You can have hundreds of video tracks and hundreds of audio tracks if you want. And just because we're creating 3 doesn't mean we're limited to 3. We can always add other tracks very easily, be they audio or video, without any problems whatsoever. So video tracks, the default is 3, we'll go with that. And then we've got one master track, which at the moment is standard, although there are different options. And we've got 3 audio tracks that are going to be selected. All of these are defined as standard. And the advantage of this for CS6 is that you can drop a stereo or a mono track into a standard track, and they'll carry on playing and they'll work together. So we're going to create 3 audio tracks. You can save the preset if you like. Once you've got everything sorted out, you can save it as a preset, and you can also name it. I'm going to leave mine as sequence 01 to start off with. Here are sequence presets. We've still got HDV for what I'm actually going to work on. You can choose whichever one matches your footage, and we click OK. And Premiere Pro has a little think, and it opens. This is our CS6 default layout. And in the next tutorial we'll start talking about this new interface, and then we'll move on to import footage and create sequences